All right. There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. We have John and Sarah here with us, and we're going to talk about their journey with CDH. If you guys can tell us where you're from, a little bit about yourselves, and when you first heard the words congenital diaphragmatic hernia.
I'll let the ladies go first.
Okay, so we're from Gibbon, which is pretty close to Newcastle in England. We're first-time parents. This is our first child. Been together a couple of years now, and when we found out about Logan, obviously it was the best news in the world. But then, as I'm a type 1 diabetic, I got sent for my scan very early, my anomaly scan. And at 16 weeks, that's when they picked it up. They couldn't 100% guarantee us what it was at the time, so they asked us to come back 2 weeks later, and they had a good look, and then it was confirmed that it was CDH. And it was shattering, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I think initially when we got sent to the hospital, the RVI in Newcastle, earlier than what we were meant to be sent there for. And the guy who did the scan said he'd probably be one of the only ones that would have been able to pick up obviously the condition Logan had, CDH. I think the initial 2 weeks afterwards for both of us was was more of a killer, I suppose, than the initial diagnosis, because we were waiting to either see, has he got it, how bad is it, and we knew nothing, absolutely nothing about it. So after the scan, we were sat down in a room, and that's when we first heard about CDH. Never heard of it before, like I said. And then after that, you kind of start doing the thing that you get told the most not to do, which is Google. And you try not to think about it. I'm kind of the way I am. Unless it's in black and white, I kind of won't believe it until it's there. But I know, and Sarah, I'll tell you, she's a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm way more anxious, and I think when you're pregnant anyway, your anxiety levels are that high. You just want to look after the little one inside you, and it was really, really hard. You couldn't prepare yourself for anything like that. I mean, you sit there and all you can think of yourself through your early stages of pregnancy is as long as your baby's okay. And then when you get told that your baby's not okay, and the hardest thing is, like, even if they survive, they still have to face those few operations. And it's like, I remember looking at Logan when he was first born, and just before it's the most silliest little thing, but before we went in, I was just looking at his perfect skin, completely unblemished, and thinking, God, my baby's gonna, it sounds so silly because it's like it saved his life, but he's gonna have a big, he's just not going to be like that anymore. And it's just the little things like that used to kill me.
I think for me, as a first time parent, you see all the Facebook stories about people putting up gender scans and all that kind of thing. I went from absolutely loving seeing them on the scans to every single week dreading it. It was I'd always have to go to work the day before to keep myself occupied, and even on the days of the scans, it would be really hard because you'd just kind of zone out, but at the same time trying to
keep my mind off it.
Keep Sarah's mind off it. I think her mum came for all the scans at the RVI, which kind of helped me be able to zone out and keep Sarah occupied. And each and every time, I think until the 28-week scan, we're getting good news saying, oh, the liver's down, the liver hasn't went up, etc. And then at the 28-week scan, we got told
it started shifting.
It was different from where it was. So you start thinking, we went from being told 70% chance of survival to, well, we don't know. And again, they couldn't confirm it on the day, so it was another wait for an MRI, and then again another wait because in the UK there's only one person in the country that can actually look at fetal MRIs, and then that had to be sent back, and then we had to go again to find out 9% of his liver had went up, which in the grander scale of things, especially when you go on Facebook and we join all these groups about CDH, 9% actually isn't as bad, but you still think to yourself, this is different. What does this mean now?
Why is it moving up now?
Yeah, why all of a sudden from not going anywhere has it moved now? And that was kind of where I was at, but again, I was just looking at what was on the paper saying, look, he's in the better category because of this, and it made it a little easier, I suppose, to kind of get there. And then obviously Logan decided to make an appearance very early.
Well, early. My waters broke what day? It was probably the 9th of December. He wasn't due until the 11th of January. So my waters broke early. And when we got to the hospital, I hadn't dilated yet, but obviously all that protection had gone around him. So the guy that was doing our fetal MRI said, no, you cannot have that baby yet. He is to stay in there till Christmas Eve. You need to keep him in there for another 2 weeks. And then literally 3 days later, I think I was in slow labour. I gradually just dilated to 10 centimetres. I wouldn't take any pain medicine because I knew Logan was going to be on really hard drugs when he came out. And I didn't want him sedated before he absolutely had to be. So all I'd take was paracetamol, and I had a night where I'd have this contraction and I'd run to the toilet to push because I thought I needed the loo. And then I'd come back and I'd probably sleep for 5 minutes and then it'd happen again. But they just told me it was Braxton Hicks in the hospital. They says I couldn't possibly be having contractions. And so I begged them anyway for the doctor in the morning. And I said, look, I don't want to take any painkillers, but please, can you get her to come and just review me? And she came and had a look and she went, oh, yeah, he's there. He's coming now. You can't have your cesarean because with me being diabetic, there's a big risk to my vision. She says, we're going to just have to get him out by forceps to try and minimise your pushing, but he's coming, there's no time. And he was literally out within 8 minutes. He was there quick, very quick.
I mean, I'll never forget him coming out. Obviously, we were all a bit scared because we didn't know what the chances were with him coming early, being born at 35 weeks. And, all the teams were there. They were great. They kind of spoke to us. And, when he came out, unlike I think in certain cases, we got to spend a little bit of time with him. I'll never forget when the doctor was trying to intubate him, him causing quite the fuss for a newborn, being only a few minutes old. And then me saying behave, and I'm just staring at us and letting them do their thing. And then to be wheeled away and hold Sarah's hand was kind of
amazing.
Kind of what you hope for without conditions aside. And looking at him, you wouldn't think he had CDH. You would think he was just a normal baby.
He was just so healthy, didn't he?
Yeah, he was just being taken away to kind of be, make sure he was okay. And then we started our journey on special care baby unit. It took about 6 hours or so to get him, settled, everyone to know exactly what was going on, who he was, condition he had, etc. And fortunately for us, the RVI is one of the better hospitals to deal with CDH babies. And I think Sarah was fortunate that before she came to the hospital, she knew a few people from our area, local area, whose babies were going into the hospital that either had or were going to be born with CDH.
So we've had a nice little support group.
We had a nice little support group, but it doesn't prepare you for that first visit. into special care. You see all the machines that are around. You see so many nurses stand around your child, and you just think, what on earth is going on here? And you that's kind of when the panic sets in.
I think I went into shock because I went and spent a bit of time with him, and then all of a sudden I had to leave the room because I became really faint, and as soon as I left the room, I started retching, and I think it was literally just the shock of seeing everything. So it's not how it's meant to be. You're meant to be able to sit there and hold your baby, and then obviously I went down onto a ward where I'm recovering, and they try and keep you away from the other mothers, but you can hear everyone else with the babies, and you're just sat there in a room on your own at night, and really you should be sat there with your baby, and it was torture. It was horrible.
Yeah, I think over the first few days, I think for me as a coping mechanism, I would always ask the doctors, so is this best case scenario? Was this best case scenario? To kind of get into my head where he was and how either good or bad the situation was. And I mean, he did fantastic leading up to his operation. He never really
It was
needed.
a bit difficult to get him off his nitric, wasn't it?
Yeah,
always clung on to his nitric.
Yeah, the last few clicks on his nitric oxide, but once he got to his operation, his repair, he was brilliant. He came back on less oxygen. Not that he ever really needed a massive amount, and for the first few days, it was. He was amazing. You thought in your head, I've got that end in sight. Let's get him home, car seat, and post pictures on Facebook walking out the hospital. And then
he developed sepsis through his long line on Christmas Day, and obviously we spent the morning with him, and we were about to leave to go and get our own dinner. And we're sort of looking at him, and we're just like, something's not 100% now. And then within an hour, we were called back by the doctor himself. He said, look, Logan's really, really ill. You need to come in. We need to talk to you. And he sat us down in this room, and he was just like, head in hands, I'm really sorry. I do not know what's wrong with him. He's really, really poorly, though. Couldn't grow anything on his blood cultures. And then a few days later, he was on pretty much stage 3 antibiotics, so the highest ones that they can put him on.
Yeah.
And then they were like, right, we've managed to develop sepsis cons through his long line. Can't get, because he's really terrible to cannulate, because he's been cannulated so many times. They couldn't risk putting another long line in, so they had to just blast him full of antibiotics and hope it goes up the long line as well. The amount of long lines he had in total were just crazy, but after that it was mainly trying to start his feeds. I mean, his oxygen was okay, he went on to CPAP, but for some reason he wasn't going to the toilet, and he was still producing a lot of green bile. So we were sat there having cuddles for the first time. I remember that was New Year's Day. Yeah. And the doctor came over to us a few days later while we were having a cuddle, and he went, right, Logan's going for another operation in the morning. And we were like, well, what do you mean? Like, why? What's wrong? Why does he need another operation? And he was just like, look, his bowel's not moving, and we fear that it's either got caught in the patch or it's matted, but we don't know. We're going to have to go in there, explore, and just do what we can. And if we feel the need to do something, we'll have to do it then and there. So we went home, we stayed with him the day, and then at night we said good night. We said, come on, Logan, behave. I goes, we'll be back early in the morning to see you and everything. Just have a nice night, okay? And we left, and again within the hour the surgeon had called us herself, and she said, you need to come, he's going in for the operation now, he's really sick. And when we got there, I'll never forget that, he was literally ghost white, his eyes were red, his lips were red, and she was like, he's really, really sick. And when they opened him up from his CDH repair, where the bowel's quite sticky, it had all matted, and it caused a massive blockage. And they said if they would have left it, he wouldn't have survived till the morning. He would have just it would have just erupted and he would have got sepsis and died really quick. So they had to give him a temporary stoma, and
yeah, that's where kind of not the fun. It definitely wasn't fun.
Yeah.
From like our perspective, we already were facing the prospect of, you know, coming home maybe on oxygen and adding this new
stoma as well.
New stoma into things. It was another thing for us to kind of to learn. And for he started to tolerate his feeds, and we thought, brilliant, yeah, cracking. And we were moved to Ward 9, which is basically the surgical ward, so they could keep a closer eye because he didn't require the care of the special care unit anymore. He kind of he stopped needing that care. So we went over there, and over the next few days, they were monitoring his output from the stoma, and because, well, to this day we still kind of don't know. We can only assume, because no one could tell us, that because the stoma was quite high up and he had 20 centimeters of his bowel removed, the output was too great. So we were putting in what would be classed as full feeds,
and that was effectively with all the drugs as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's with the drugs that were meant to slow it down, and it was just all pretty much coming straight out into the stoma. So they again told us he's going to need another operation to reverse the stoma, and that's kind of where, I suppose, from a mental side for us, that's where it was starting to break us. And for me in particular, I was going to work to kind of get away from it, but even then I was finding myself getting annoyed at work over like little silly things and getting upset. And kind of the role I adopted, which I think most men will probably admit to anyways, don't let your partner see your kind of emotions. It's just kind of shut off. And he went in for that operation.
Took a lot longer.
Took a lot longer because, again, they had to remove another 2 centimeter bowel that they saw they didn't like. So as well as going back through the scar where the stoma was, they had to recut his initial CDH repair scar open again to have a closer look. So that would be the third time that had been opened back up. And from there, it was a case of, for us, because of the way in which the ward worked, one parent had to stay with the baby overnight, which was never an issue for us at all.
You'd never leave him on his own.
But the nil by mouth, I think, near destroyed us.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
Because obviously he wasn't allowed to feed till he was ready, like all CDH babies, but it was just because he'd been toyed with, but because he'd been tried with milk and then it's been taken away and then he's tried with it and then it's taken away and it's been constantly seesawed like that back and forwards. He's had that taste for it. He knows what it is and he knows he wants it. So trying to tell him you can't have it is horrible. And even now he's 20 weeks on Wednesday, and if you don't give him his milk on time, it is like he's never been fed. He's so upset.
He lets you know.
Yeah, it's like he's not like a CDH kid. He's like, you can hear his lungs, like he screams the place down.
Yeah, that was kind of the hardest thing for us mentally. I mean, you're talking, one of us would leave at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, especially when he was nil by mouth. He would not sleep until that person came back the next morning. Because he just wouldn't settle. You try everything possible, dummy, swaddling, but because he was so hungry, there was literally nothing you can do. And it got to the point where I was there one night and I completely just blew with the nurse that was looking after him. Said, look, you need to do something here because it's not good enough anymore.
It's not fair.
And it wasn't their fault, but just seeing him the way he was, it doesn't matter if you're a first-time parent or, you know, you've had 3, 4, 5 kids. You don't like to see a child like that. And I mean, he was screaming the place down. And
he doesn't understand, does he?
He doesn't understand what he just looks at you and you just think to yourself, like, I'm a failure. I'm allowing my baby to kind of
And he went
cry.
so skinny, lost so much weight in that time. He was a little bag of bones. I remember you'd hold him and you'd feel every rib, his backbone in your hands. There was absolutely nothing to him. It was shocking, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was really, really worrying how thin he went. It was so, and even his face was gaunt, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
even his little face.
But I mean, after that third operation, things started to go well. But then you didn't, because he'd had so many operations already. You want to get yourself into that false sense of security of, yes, this is it. We're finally going home. And
We did get warned, however, that he was coming home on oxygen. They were like, "Your baby will be coming home on it. He needs it." And she literally walked in one day after his third operation. She just went, "Right, I'm just turning his oxygen off for a little bit." And I was like, "What?" She went, "Yeah, I'm just gonna see what he's like." And I was like, "Oh, and then you're gonna give it 20 minutes. You're gonna come in, aren't you, and turn it back on?" She went, "Yeah." And she turned his oxygen off, walked out the room, and he never went back on it after that. It was crazy. He just never needed it. It was unreal. Never thought he'd do it. Like, it was just.
and then day by day, with you were starting to do what you'd class as normal parent things.
Yeah.
So changing nappies, feeding, rocking him to sleep, singing to him, even though Sarah has some very embarrassing videos of me singing, which no one will ever see. And it was brilliant to see him smile for the grandparents, great grandparents, aunties,
He
to be able
talks
to see
now,
them.
doesn't shut up talking. He's constantly talking now. And he sings with you as well. So if you're sat holding him, singing him songs, trying to get him to sleep, he coos back. And if you get a high pitched bit, he does a little squeal. He's doing it. He's doing so good. Like, you do still get those moments though, because Logan really gets bad reflux. It's horrific, his reflux. And sometimes when he's bringing milk up constantly, it's like you feel helpless in a way. You just like, come on, like you just want to feel like you're getting over it, but then it's just hard, I suppose. He's
And
doing so well.
that I'll never forget that day where, like, right, if he puts on weight tomorrow, he comes home and you're just kind of like,
Come on.
what?
Yeah.
And I just remember being absolutely speechless, and like I get emotional, like, even talking about it now. But even like Sarah said, the little things, being able to put the car seat in, knowing that someone was going to be in that after 11 weeks, I can't even put into words how much that actually.
Having him in his next to me for that first night was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you just went to bed and he was there. Like, it was how it was always meant to be. So I remember when he was in special care, for months I would not be able to look out of the bed. I always had to face into John, because I used to look out the bed and all I could think of is he should be there. Why is he not there? And to have him there all of a sudden was absolutely mind-blowing. It was crazy.
I mean, we before we left, we went back to the special care unit,
To show
and
everyone.
we were fortunate that all the doctors were happened to be coming out of a meeting at the time to see him, and they were like, "Wow, is this the same baby that came in?" And I can't even put into words
It was lovely.
how much they've done for us, not just as people, but as a family. I mean, it's it's kind of what you dream of, to have that perfect little family, and without them and without the initial diagnosis, he wouldn't be here today. And I know they say a lot, would do it all the time, but it doesn't matter how much you do it all the time. You can't put into words how grateful you are, and like, it's just an undescribable feeling now,
Saved our lives.
having him home. If it wasn't for those guys, he wouldn't be here. And I think Sarah was benefited from her group of friends as well. So Emma, Lauren, Sophie, Bobby,
Yeah.
they all helped her. And unfortunately, one of a friend's babies passed away, little Leo, but they were there for all Logan's journey. So no matter how sad it is with Leo being gone, God rest his soul, we know that they're always going to be friends for life, being linked by this CDH bond. I mean, even his little dummy clip has his name and CDH on it.
Yeah. I can't get it out of his mouth.
Yeah, I wouldn't try and put it out of his mouth now because
I'm not getting it out of his mouth.
But you know, it shaped us as people, and you know, even through the tough times, you know, I urge anyone who's kind of thinking, oh, this, you know, this isn't good news, just try and look at the positive, learn from each other's stories. I know not all stories about CDH are positive, but
you've got to give them a chance, haven't you?
You've got to give them a chance.
They'll surprise you 9 times out of 10. They're a lot stronger than what they look. You know, we've seen miracles happen in special care, and that's what they are. These babies are little miracles.
They really are.
They really, really are.
You are the last of the 5 Newcastle families that I've interviewed. So I've got all 5 of you now. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's good to have all 5 perspectives and journeys and to see how close all of you are. It gives hope to new families who are diagnosed that they're not alone, that other families will be at the hospital, other families will be at CDHI. And even though it's not the normal birth and first few weeks or months that any of us would have ever hoped, you know, I mean, that we all dreamed of and wanted, it can still be wonderful and amazing and just a different journey than what you thought you were going to take, but no less beautiful. So I think I think it's wonderful that you all had each other and that you've shared that bond and all your stories with us. And I thank you very much.
No problem.
That's
anytime.
Okay. That's okay.
Is there anything you would like to tell newly diagnosed families or any advice that you have?
I think from speaking from a man's perspective, don't be afraid to share your feelings. I bottled mine up a lot, and even like I said, that escape from work, etc. Don't be afraid, even if it's just a co-worker or it's a member of the family. You know, just say what's on your mind. It makes it a lot easier. And I suppose unless you say it, again, from my perspective, unless you see it in black and white that there is no hope, there is always hope. So don't give up. This diagnosis doesn't mean that it's the end. It just means it's the beginning of a different journey. So don't lose faith.
I think from my point of view, I'd just like to tell people to not be afraid to love their babies. I know it's hard going into something and getting attached and not knowing if they're going to make it, but that baby, regardless of if it makes it or not, needs to be loved, and it needs to know it's going to always be loved. So I just want people to know that it's okay to love.
That's very good advice from both of you. It is hard to open up your heart and to open up and talk about what's going on. And the biggest reason CDH couples don't make it is because they don't talk, they don't share, especially the dads. Everybody's trying to be strong for each other. No one talks to the other because they don't want to upset the other one. And you have to let it bring you closer together. And you have to be able to open up your heart to whatever happens. So thank you both so much. You're an adorable family, and we really appreciate you sharing with us.
No, thank you
very
for your
much.
time. Thank you.